Hello, Adam.
Oh, I feel like I'm back in grade 3. Hello, Mrs. Worthington.
I have a question for you, young man.
Yes, Mrs. Worthington.
Is rhyme a crime?
Some of the time.
People take rhyme so seriously. Oh my gosh. I didn't even realize that until I started writing, because all the stories I grew up with, well, not all of them, but most of them were rhyming and the good old Dr. Seuss effect. But now if you write in rhyme, people get all serious and have you found that?
I can sense your energy.
Angsty just thinking about it.
I'm imagining your legs doing that little jittery thing. I can't talk about rhyme. This interview is over.
Just stand up and storm off. Told you not to ask me about
how many times?
Didn't my PA say to you, don't mention rhyme?
She's fired. She is so fired.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, lucky she's good at editing. I don't know what I was going to say.
Okay. Anyway. Moving on. Tell me about rhyme. Is rhyme?
Tell me about rhyme. I loved rhyme as a kid as well. Dr. Seuss, Bill Pete were my favorites. Roald Dahl, revolting rhymes, nursery rhymes, it's right there in the title. And I read, I think it was Mem Fox's book on reading, talking about the more nursery rhymes kids know and the more they hear rhyme, the more chance they are at being able to read. It's going to make it easier for them to read. Rhyme is obviously very important, but yeah, some publishers in their guidelines will actually say, don't submit rhyme to us. So and what I've heard, this may or may not be true, is that they just get so much bad rhyme that they just can't. Just nah, don't send us rhyme. Yeah. So, but look, I agree. It's a really interesting one. And I do love writing rhyme, but I think the thing about rhyme that's interesting is I don't know any of the rules, if that I don't know what an iambic pentameter is, and I don't know what this meter is and that meter. I have no idea. I write it. And if it sounds good when I read it out, I go, there you go. That's a good rhyme. And that's one of the keys. That's one of the biggest keys is when you write in rhyme, reading it out loud.
Yeah, absolutely. So the feedback I got from publishers, especially big publishers, is if they're international, rhyme doesn't translate into other languages. So if you've got someone who's got international rights distribution in China and India and Europe, and they want to translate your story into those languages so they can sell the international rights and make more money, if it's in rhyme, you can't just translate it, you can't just flip it. So it's really sad, but it's a business decision rather than a decision on what stories are most fun or even best for kids learning how to read. It's
absolutely
fine line, isn't it?
It is. And it's actually when we hear that, it's a true reason why they don't take it on often, but it's actually not true. Permit me to get exhibit A.
Show me.
I'm going to show you. Oh, some of my other ones are underneath the computer. Hang on, but I got these ones. So this was Catch a Bubble, a book I did with Hinkler in rhyme. And so, for example, Charles blew bubbles that just wouldn't pop, and when he leaned in close, Jenny cried out, "Stop." "Don't worry," said Charles. "It's okay. Have a try." Jenny blew bubbles too, and they started to fly. So it's in rhyme. Here is the, I think maybe Dutch version of that or something. And here, Fanga Bublan, om de kan.
Om de kan.
Om de kan, people. So it can be done. I think it's not easy. And I've got other ones. I've got some books I did. Oh, hang on. This could break everything. Okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
This one, Merry Christmas, Brian.
Merry Christmas.
When I'm looking at this in the computer, it looks like I'm so reading Merry Christmas Brain. Merry Christmas Brain.
Merry Christmas, Brain. Christmas
this was,
every day.
yes, it's Pinky and the Brain. But this was done by a company in Slovenia, and it was all in rhyme. So it was all lots of stories, all little rhyming stories. And that got done into, it's actually amazing because it must be hard to translate, but I imagine Dr. Seuss is translated into a gazillion different languages as well. But those ones went into Slovenian, German, Austrian, Spanish, Italian, French. But when you read it, it rhymes in those languages. Like, it's incredible. It's incredible. And my dad speaks German, so I got him a German version. And he's like, yeah, right. Like, he read it out and it rhymes in German. And he's like, the meaning is slightly different because sometimes the words have to go in different order to fit the language. But he said it's basically saying the same thing. Like, it's basically the same rhyme. It's not word for word, but it's close. It's pretty close. So it can be done, but it's obviously a bit of a hindrance to it.
It would be an additional cost to get somebody to translate it,
right?
And have it make sense in rhyme in a different language.
Yes, so I mean, I could do it in the accent, but that's not the same.
Yes, you could just speak in German and speak in your German accent.
My German accent. I'd had to do a video in German once, and I couldn't not yell. It was like Merry Christmas, like doctor, doctor. It was terrible.
Okay, settle down. You'll scare the children. It's okay. It's okay. Oh my goodness.
That is a big thing with rhyme. Is that translation is one thing we hear a lot with writing in rhyme for sure.
Yeah. And why else do you think that publishers have such an aversion to it? Because I know there's still some Aussie publishers who will publish in rhyme if it's good rhyme, but then there's others that they just I mean, I was speaking to one publisher who said that 80% of the manuscripts that they receive are in rhyme.
Yeah.
And they just can't, like, they don't want to do that. Why do you think that is?
Interesting. I think because these books, especially ones in rhyme, are going to be aimed at younger kids, that they're going to be read out loud. And so the rhyme has to just be spot on. Like, it has to, and that takes a lot of work from the editors and the writers and the company and everything. So I think just that sometimes, and of that 80% they get in rhyme, which is obviously because when we read a lot of books to our kids, a lot of them are in rhyme. So we know it's what kids like, so that's what we write, and it's what we know from as being kids ourselves. But yeah, it's gotta be good. It's gotta be a good read aloud. I think sometimes if it's, well, obviously it does depend on the publisher. I think sometimes they go in-house. Like if a publisher's worked with an author who can do rhyme, then they'll say, can you do this book? Or or if that author submits to them, even when they've already done books in rhyme with them, then they're a chance to get it done. But yeah, writing it so it kind of forces the reader to read it the way you want them to is really important, because even just a slight emphasis on the wrong bit of a word can make it seem like there's too many syllables in a sentence, and it's weird. So what I'll do is try and read it wrong, and I'll read it with emphasis on different words and see if it still works. And then you kind of force people by punctuation, putting in commas, ... and all that sort of stuff, exclamation marks and everything really changes. And italics are really important as well, because putting that emphasis is going to make it a different rhythm. The magic of Dr. Seuss is I try and read his wrong, and you can't. I'll read them in 5 different ways and it still works perfectly. He is a genius.
Amazing. I think a bit of a trap though is that people try and be the next Dr. Seuss, and you can't. Like, that's him, and also it's been done. Yep. And publishers can tell whether you're trying to, I guess, not copy but emulate something that's already done. Like, trying to be unique and new and something that's a hole in the market in rhyme and doing it really well is really, really tricky.
Yes, absolutely. And you get I think you're right, especially because Dr. Seuss is so good, it can come across as a bit of a poor imitation if you try and do it like Dr. Seuss. So again, it has to be such either a brilliant story or as good as Dr. Seuss for it to actually to get picked up. And it's interesting because people will say, oh, you know, I look at picture books and I look at the rhyme and you know, they're not that great and all that sort of thing. So some do still get done that may not be super easy to read out loud, or may. The other thing about rhyme is that it may be great rhyme, but you can't do that at the expense of the story. And I think that's another thing that publishers find is the words rhyme, that's great, but it's the story kind of it's lost in the rhyme. They're focused so much on that.
Or you're using words because they rhyme, not because they move the story on. Like you're trying to like squish this beautiful story into rhyme because you want it to rhyme. I want it to rhyme. But if you just kind of let it go and actually wrote it and have, you know, with the three-legged kangaroo from Uluru, that has rhyming elements in it, like, and a lot of the language rhymes within the sentence, but it's not a rhyming one because it's too long, it's 550 words. But there's definitely ways around it. And I can remember my favorite books from being a kid were based on all the old Aussie bush poetry, so like Mulga Bill's Bicycle, and The Man from Snowy River, and they just don't do that anymore. And it just you know, I've tried a couple of times getting a book published with that kind of style, and the feedback that I'm getting from publishers is that it's too old-fashioned. What do you think about rhyme dating a book?
I guess it depends on how it's written in a way, but I don't know. I think rhyme's kind of timeless in a lot of ways. I mean, that's sort of the Mulga Bill's Bicycle and Man, like they're such rolling sort of stories that almost it's that style. They might think it needs to be snappier and sharper these days, but to hold kids' attention. And then there's the word length thing and all that sort of thing. But I mean, the Lorax is 1,782 words long or something like that. Like it again, he's a genius, but there's always exceptions to the rule. But yeah, I think that sort of rolling style in rhyme, they're probably less likely to do. They would say, oh, you know, we could do that as a chapter book if it's not in rhyme rather than as a rhyming story. Rhyming story, we want like each page to be kind of snappy and go. Maybe if it's funny one, have that punchline on every page, and if it's just a story, then it needs to, I don't know. I don't think, but I'm with you. Like I don't think it does. I don't think it dates. And I love that old school stuff, and I love that sort of feel to it. And I think it'll come back around. I think things do go in circles, and there'll be. So the thing is, someone will do it. Someone will do one that's like that will just get through and get published, and it'll go well, and then that'll become the in thing, and so there'll be 50 of them.
Yeah, I think one mistake that I see when people send me their manuscripts to edit that are in rhyme is that it's not a picture book manuscript, it's a poem. And they're two really different things. Like you can't just have a poem that you've written and then think that is like, and a lot of people do that. They write a poem and somebody might say to them, oh, that would make a lovely book. But a poem and a rhyming picture book manuscript aren't the same thing. And you would have experience with that too.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a poem is probably closer to a song maybe than a picture book in terms of the sort of format and the way it's done. Yeah, because picture book, there's so much, like there is the layout and what's happening on each page or each spread and a poem can be hard to break into that. And I mean, it can be done, but I think you're right. I think it's a different thing, and poems have their place as poems as well. And you know, I've got some there like Elizabeth Honey and a few other ones where it's a collection of poems for kids. They're amazing. But yeah, I think a picture book's a different thing, and that's an interesting thing to do, writing a picture book text out in either or, but certainly in rhyme. But see if it works, if you can put it onto pages and see if it works, whether it's a stanza or a page or whatever it is. But it really does kind of need to be broken up into those stanzas and those sections to work as a book. It always can't be that sort of flowing thing. It has to have little, almost a story within each stanza, because that's going to be a spread in a book.
Yeah, it's all about the page turns, isn't it? It's sometimes it's tricky and you want to do a page turn in the middle of a line, and
Yeah.
So what do you think would be the best advice for people who have got a picture book manuscript that's rhyming? Would you say have a crack or consider doing a non-rhyming version as well?
I think definitely if there's publishers accepting, like if they're not saying they're not accepting rhyme, I think it's definitely worth giving it a crack. But in saying that, I would, before you give it a crack, just refine it and work it, read it out loud a million times. But also really important is to get other people to read it out loud, because when we write it and read it out, we know how we want it to be. And someone else reads it, and if they're stumbling over a bit, or if they read it and you're like, oh, that's not how, no, it's meant to be read like this, that's on you, that's on the author. You've got to have it so they read it. And so doing that, because I don't know what publishers do, they may read it out loud or they may read it in their head, but if they read it out loud, you want it to read so smoothly. And sometimes it does just fall in and the rhythm's just there, and other times you do have to work at it and work out the punctuation and how it's going to go. But yeah, look, I reckon it's worth it. If they're accepting it, it's worth it, again, just to potentially get that feedback on it, but or to get it picked up, obviously, if it really works. But yeah, I think everything we sort of said, like, make sure it's good read aloud, make sure it's a story and not just a poem, and even to think about how it could be broken up and even submit it that way, like saying this spread is this and this spread is this. And so these they're under here as well. So like the little how to catch books I've done, which are in rhyme, and they basically said to me, when we do this, we're going to do a stanza, a spread.
Okay.
And that's it. So I knew exactly how it's going to be broken up, and you can work around that. And if you can, the more you can give publishers, the better in a lot of ways. I mean, it may not get done like that at all, but if they can see you've thought about it and you've gone, oh, this is how it's going to be broken up, that gives them something to work with straight away that they can use or not. But it shows that you've thought about it and you've thought about it as a book, and that puts you just that little bit above, I think.
Yeah. I think other people might be bringing sexy back, but you're bringing rhyme back.
I could take that in many different ways.
You are. You're my go-to for rhyming picture books. So
you're
bringing rhyming back. Yeah.
I'm going to start bringing sexy rhyme back.
Adam, just know your limitations here, please. Can we just stick with rhyme?
Very cool. I've actually got a rhyming book coming out soon, and this is one of those ones that it just fell. One of the rhyme, just the rhythm was just there. So I was talking on the phone to a guy, Alfred, my friend, and there was a bull ant in my house, and he's like, I said to him, Alfred, there's a bull ant. And he's like, oh, there's a bull ant in the bedroom. There's a good story for you. And I went, there's a bull ant in the bedroom and it bit me on the bum. And the rhythm was just there. And sometimes it does just fall in like that. And then you've got the flow of the story. Like then you're going to go. So when a rhyme like that hits, and when you're writing it and you go, oh, like it's the biggest thrill. Like it's amazing. I think that's why it's so exciting to write in rhyme. When you do like get that little punchline comes up, that it just works, that it rhymes, and you hadn't even thought of it, but it works. It's thrilling. That's where I get my thrills.
Amazing. So, all right. I think that we have decided that rhyming is not a crime.
It's not a crime. And if it is, crime pays.
If it's a crime,
I didn't know what you were doing. That's right. Take me away now. But as long as I can still write, like we've got to be able to hold the pen.
Tight. We'll be fine.
We'll be fine. There's definitely a market for rhyme. Anyway, I think that's the big thing, is there's definitely a market for it. People love reading it. Kids love hearing it. When it's done well, it's amazing. So yeah, if people like writing in rhyme, don't give up on it. Keep doing it for sure.
Awesome. Join Adam bringing rhyming back.
Me and JT.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Michelle.